Hi Fiona, thank you for joining me today for the Future Skills 2020 project. Could we start by you telling me just a little bit about yourself, so your career and kind of your education as well so far?
Yeah, hi Gina, great to be here today. So I am Fiona. I am currently a HR advisor for EMEA at Signature Flight Support. I joined Signature 3 years ago on their HR graduate scheme, straight out of university, where I did an undergraduate degree in Hispanic Studies with Business Management. So I spent a year actually doing an Erasmus in Madrid.
Oh, wow.
And then once I had finished my degree and started on the graduate scheme, I was actually lucky enough for the company to sponsor my master's. So I completed my master's in human resource management last September, and that was at the Uni of Hertfordshire.
So how did you kind of solve this, not so much a problem, but kind of that situation by using kind of these different learning strategies?
I think a lot of it is about having to kind of find what works. It's not always going to be the most obvious. And, you know, even within my work now, I do a lot of kind of obviously talking to managers about employees and their learning strategies and how we can help develop them. And I think, you know, often we go for this kind of one size fits all approach. Okay, we're going to do this training and that will work. And it doesn't, because every individual is different. Everybody does learn differently. And I know for myself, I'm not very good when I'm given kind of a video to watch. I kind of look out the window or like lose my train of thought. I'm much better kind of being in a room with somebody talking to me. And I found the same thing when I've been delivering training. Obviously with COVID, everything has been virtual. And it's a much more difficult to kind of hold a virtual room than it is to actually, you know, have those normal interactions when you've got a group together in a room itself. And in terms of learning strategies, you have to find what works for you. And yes, that can take a while and it can be frustrating, but eventually it will kind of click. And once you've got that, it'll just help make things moving forward a lot easier.
You've made a really interesting point about obviously everything's virtual at the moment, and it probably will be for quite a while, it seems like, with COVID. How have you found kind of if you're training people over Zoom, can you incorporate different learning strategies?
I mean, I guess it's trying to make it as interactive as possible, turning it back on them to make sure they are listening. So I'll often just throw in a random little quiz just over the last couple of slides, you know, just to kind of reiterate the points that have been made and make sure that the message that was trying to get across has got across. But being as interactive as possible, I think, you know, adding in little videos where you can often works, not just kind of speaking it at people. And I guess trying to, you know, relate to the audience that you're speaking to as well. I think a lot of the training that I'm doing is a little bit dry in terms of like HR policies. So it's about, you know, trying my best to kind of make that relatable to an employee who doesn't have the same background as me. So what comes naturally to me and I could regurgitate it, like, you know, during my sleep is not the same for them.
Yeah.
Could you identify a time where you faced some kind of adverse situation or problem before you got to the position you are today?
Yes, so I think, you know, in the work situation, there's always times to be learning, and especially on those days where things don't go as well. And I've had plenty of them. We had a situation last year where we had some issues with payroll and how we were calculating pay whilst we had employees on furlough. And it was kind of a situation where we didn't have all the information available. You know, furlough is still a relatively new concept for us in the UK, and the guidance is sparing, so you kind of have to interpret it as you see fit. And I think that's about this active learning element of, you know, you have to do what you can with what you have, and there's a lot that you learn on the job as you progress and as you are faced with different challenges. You're not always going to have the answers and you sometimes have to work through them. I mean, I'm very lucky that I have a fantastic team of professionals around me in our HR team that I can rely on for guidance. So in that respect, I'm very lucky.
So how did you solve this situation or problem by using kind of these learning strategies and this active learning skill?
So in this case, what we looked for was we tried to look at what other companies had done as much as we could find. We were trying to find as much as we could through there. And then we obviously were trying to take into account previous experience of payroll issues, not obviously directly linked to furlough, but around that area, so that we were able to incorporate elements of that kind of guidance to then solve that situation.
What would you like to tell other people, so people that may be in the HR profession or kind of in similar professions who are faced with similar situations, particularly kind of any guidance you'd give on using these skills?
I think my main kind of guidance would be around, you're not always going to know the answer to everything. Every day is a learning day, as corny as it sounds, and that's something that I have had to really work on. I feel that when I joined, I perhaps expected myself to kind of know everything and be able to solve every issue. But like I said, a lot of it is active learning. You learn as you go, you learn from others. And then obviously there are other ways of learning in terms of going out and, attending courses or joining webinars are another really good tool. But I think in a HR specifically, it's such a grey area that you really have to always be learning.
So this is probably my last question for you. So if in one sentence or a quote or a song lyric or anything, you could summarize kind of in terms of your career, your education, how you've used learning strategies. So where have they played the most important role? How do you learn best? And how will you continue to kind of incorporate these learning strategies in the future?
Find what works for you. I think that's what you have to do. Like I said, we aren't all the same and everyone is different. And once you find that thing, it will make it a lot easier.